everybody, and welcome to the next installment of our CME series, Stories of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And we're really honored today to have Bruce Stallman. Bruce is the CFO at ARC Thrift Stores, and Bruce and his wife Kelly have just an amazing story for us about the importance of gratitude, which is always important, but I think this time of year, maybe even more so. So I know you'll really appreciate what they have to share. I want to again thank you for being here. I just, so I don't forget at the end, look forward to our schedule in the new year. We're going to take a little break for the month of January, and then we'll kick off again in February. And so after the holidays, look for an announcement on our February program, which will also be incredible. And we'll hope to see you back. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bruce and Kelly because they've got a lot to share for us. Oh, one quick thing. So if you do have questions as we go along, feel free to put them in the chat. And I'll be monitoring the chat so that we get questions answered. And I think there's also a raise hand feature if you want to do that and ask a question. But I know Bruce and Kelly would be more than happy to address any questions for you either as they go along or at the end. So Bruce and Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
And no question is offensive. No question is over the line. We're kind of an open book at this point. If you go a bridge too far, we'll just say so.
Yeah, I'm sure you won't be shy about that. Thank you.
Well, I thought I'd thank you again for, it's a pleasure to meet all of you, and thank you so much for having us. It's truly a privilege for us, and just can't thank you enough. And happy holidays to everyone, and hope everyone stays warm here over the next 48 to 72 hours. It's looking like a rough ticket. But I thought I'd start, just give you a little overview of ARC Thrift Stores. Most of you, I'm assuming, have had some visibility, more or less, to ARC Thrift. We are a large nonprofit organization that takes donated goods, clothing, household goods, furniture, so forth and so on, and puts them into our thrift stores and sells them to generate funding for what are the ARC chapters. There's 15 ARC chapters across Colorado, and these organizations take our funding and any other funding they get through donations or endowments or whatnot. We're the principal funder, though, but they take those resources and then provide advocacy for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families across the state. So folks that have Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or autism or so forth and so on need help with medical services, educational services, potentially housing, legal, so forth and so on, and so on. And the ARC chapters, that's what their mission is. Our mission is to essentially fund them. We operate under an IRS tax code regulation, or section, I should say, that stipulates that we're a tax exempt organization, and so any donations that are given to us then constitute theoretically tax deductible items for an individual's income tax return. That then provides us with a relatively consistent stream of donations. We operate today 32 stores across predominantly the Front Range. We do have one store in Grand Junction. but we're strictly Colorado. We've got our most recent additional new store was opened on the 8th of December this year at Dry Creek and University across from Arapahoe High School. And we've 2 more in process, one up on Wadsworth and Wheat Ridge, and another in the Bear Valley area, Sheridan and Hampton, and those will likely open in the springtime. Just from a financial metrics perspective, our total business revenue from last year was $119 million. Since our CEO arrived in 2005, we've generated $1.1 billion of business revenue. That's direct. We did a capstone study with the DU MBA program a few years ago to determine what the economic impact of our operations is across the state. And when you add up sales and property taxes, business revenue, CapEx, other charitable and social programs, ARC Thrift Stores since 2005, by our calculations, has had an economic impact in Colorado of over $3.4 billion, billion with a B. So it's not your mom and pop's nonprofit any longer. Payroll and benefits, we've got over 1,700 employees.
Bruce, oh,
I'm back.
there we go.
Yeah. We've got over 1,700 employees, 400 of which are folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. A number of them work in the stores. We've got several in the corporate office. We've got one gal with Asperger's who works in our sales audit group. So we try to include people with developmental disabilities wherever feasible. But we spend $56 million in fiscal 22 on payroll and benefits. Other OpEx for the company's $90 million. And the charitable donations to the distributions to the ARC chapters, which is ostensibly what's left over after the operating costs and CapEx and reserves, was $13 million last year. Fiscal 22, we're on a fiscal October to September year end. And since 2005, we've given over $125 million to the chapters to support people with IDD in the state, intellectual and developmental disabilities. So it's a substantial business enterprise, notwithstanding its socially conscious organization and exists to do good for the communities. My background is I am.
Before you go.
Huh? Oh, please.
So to be clear, I sit on the board of the ARC of Colorado, the statewide organization, and then we've both been involved with our local chapter, the ARC of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Elbert County. Elbert counties. We help thousands of families, children, infants. The chapters do through the lifespan of adults, the children and adults with developmental disabilities. By definition, that's any disability that is acquired before the age of 22. And in Colorado, there's also an intellectual tweak to it because we narrowed the field, that you must have an IQ of 75 or below. And these are the NICU babies that grow up with complex needs. Anybody who, any teenage driver who acquires it during a car crash. Anybody who has an intellectual disability acquired before the age of 22. In education, healthcare, community access, employment, housing. And so we started out in education, and it was started by parents over 60 years ago. So it's grown and morphed, and it's not always pretty because we're all parents who haven't gotten any sleep for 20 or 30 years. But the leadership is definitely comes from within. And we also are morphing into more sophisticated nonprofit business management. But it makes a difference for thousands and thousands of families every year across the state.
Yeah.
So that's the mission. And when Lloyd came in 2005, he said, we need to marry the message, the mission with the message. And then he's walked his talk.
Yep.
With Bruce's help.
Well, yes, that's correct. As limited as that help has been. So it is, as I said earlier, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Although I haven't practiced in years, I remain a registered CPA. So it's what Kel meant by one of your own. Right out of college, undergrad, I went to work for what was Peat Marwick Mitchell, which now at least I think is KMP. I can't think of it. KPMG. Peat Marwick. There you go. And as I like to, I worked for Ballparky 4.5 years, started in audit, did a couple years in tax, and then went back to grad school at Indiana University and got an MBA. And I've been started in the energy industry out of graduate school with Amoco in Chicago. Got transferred out here. Kel and I get into this momentarily, but Kel's a native from Fort Collins. I grew up in the Detroit area, or as we like to refer to it, God's country. So, as I said, it's a pleasure to be with you today, and I wanted to share my philosophy with you in terms of kicking off the presentation. I say we don't get to choose what happens to us, but we do get to choose how we respond. And first and always, it's about gratitude. Let me tell you why. Kelly and I were married in 1985, and our oldest son, Jay, was born in 1989. He was everything we'd hoped for. The twins, Mark and Eric, were born in 1992. And as it so happens, they were born at 28 weeks, so very premature. Mark weighed 2 pounds, 15 ounces at birth. Eric weighed 1 pound, 14 ounces. Mark was in the neonatal intensive care unit for 2 months, Eric for 3. Ultimately, the twins were both diagnosed with cerebral palsy and medical fragility. Both were drip fed with gastrointestinal tubes directly into the tummy because they couldn't consume enough nutrition orally to sustain themselves. Mark was nonverbal and non-mobile, but learned to communicate with a speech computer like Stephen Hawking, although to be fair, his cerebral output was not quite on the same scale. Eric was verbal but non-mobile and ultimately was on a trach vent for assisted breathing. Both used power wheelchairs, and we lost track of how many surgeries each boy had, but it was easily 1 per year, and not wimpy stuff like tonsillectomies, but spinal fusions, bone and muscle lengthening, stomach Nissens, etc. Our house essentially looked like a hospital ICU with medical equipment and alarms, 24/7 nursing care, an in-ceiling lift system, which you can see behind us, to move the kids around when they got too big to manually pick up. I saw a terrific bumper sticker the other day It says experience wildlife, raise twins. They have no idea. It wasn't entirely all trauma and drama, however. We like to say we also put the fun in dysfunctional. In 2014, the twins were invited by the Rocky Mountain Easter Seals camp to throw out a first pitch at the Rockies game, which was quite the adventure. We got down to the stadium, got a tour, met some of the staff, met Walker Monfort, the son of the Mr. Monfort, the owner, and they got a tour through the labyrinth that is Coors Field underneath. When it came time to go out on the field for the actual first pitch ceremony, they ushered us to the groundskeeper's entrance in the left field corner of the field. There's a big gate that opens up, and when ultimately they told us it was okay to proceed to get down to home plate. So I was driving Eric's power wheelchair, and we went down the left field line and ended up at home plate waiting for Mark and Kelly, who were following behind us. And when they got to the third base dugout, the visiting dugout, one of the bench coaches for the San Francisco Giants, whom we were playing that day, waved him over and gave him a couple autographed baseballs, which was a massively classy gesture on their part. What was decidedly less classy was Eric and I standing at home plate yelling, "Throw him back." So, but then they did the pitch, and it was extraordinary. It truly was. Another thing they used to do that was fun was the twins like to play unified basketball. And unified basketball, if you've never seen it, I highly encourage you to check it out. Special needs kids from area high school play a special needs team from another area high school. In our case, it was all Littleton Public Schools. So they get the special need kids out on the varsity basketball court, throw out the basketball, and then the kids who can run and dribble a little bit run down the court and try and make a basket, and if they do, all the people in the stands applaud, and the scoreboard increments, and the kids are just massively proud. It's just awesome. The twins couldn't dribble or run, of course, so they had a helper put the basketball on their tray of their wheelchair and then drive them to the other end of the court, whereupon another helper would hold a basket, a hoop, and the kids would push the ball off as best they could into the other hoop. Same drill. Everyone would applaud, and the scoreboard goes up, and they thought that was great. After a while, Eric decided that he really didn't want to play anymore. He wanted to referee. So, okay, we got him a black and white striped referees jersey, and he had a whistle on a lanyard, and he'd drive around the court blowing fouls on people, whistling them for fouls, which of course, necessitated helpful commentary from the stands. I'd pop up and offer comments like, "Ref, you blew that call, bad zebra." At which point then he'd drive his chair over to where I was sitting and point at me in the stands and throw me out of the game. And I had to explain to him, you can't throw me out of the game. I have the car keys. So I'll share my screen, and we'll show you a few pictures for context, just so you get a feel for, who they were as people.
Do full screen.
I will. Can you see that?
Anyone?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Full screen.
I think it is. Is that pretty much full screen?
We see the thumbnails on the left-hand side
Yeah.
still, Bruce.
All right, I'm trying to, wonder how I do that. I thought this,
Nope, go up to view.
well. Well, it may have to be what it is. Hang on.
All right, hang on one second.
Okay.
So while he tries to find full screen, this is Mark and Eric. And they are, it's gonna be up here.
Well,
Sorry, guys, we haven't mastered this. I will master it before the next one. Um,
Go to
This-
slideshow at
yeah,
the top.
go to slideshow at the top,
There's a tab called slideshow.
right? New slide?
no. Slideshow.
Yes,
And then I think you can present. Yeah.
present online.
No.
No.
I'm-
From the beginning. And
Well, let's proceed. I don't want to screw this up.
okay, well, that's not okay.
Well, it's. I think it'll be okay. I mean, they'll get a sense of,
Try the bottom where it
I
says notes. Go to the very next one over. Try that one.
Add notes. Oh, there we go. Now double click that. No,
2 more over. The one that kind of looks like a screen.
right, yeah, I tried that one originally, not this one.
Nope. 1 more over.
And then
It's not cooperating.
resume.
No.
slide
Okay.
Resume.
Yeah, it's not
It's not
cooperating,
creating.
but
Shoot, I'm sorry, folks. So anyway, these are great pictures. They're really good if they're full screen. This is Mark and Eric. They were born again at 1 and 2 pounds. And this is, here they are 3 months old and they are both inside an infant car seat. So this
this
is,
was the day we took them home.
well, actually, but this is in the hospital because Eric didn't come home, but this is their due date.
Ah,
So yes.
Yeah, okay.
They're 3 months old. And so they were teeny tiny. As you can see right here, this is their very first family photo. This was the church directory, right? So getting these guys out and about, they're both still on oxygen. We whipped the oxygen off. And we got the 3-year-old in there, and then Bruce is holding Mark and I'm holding Eric. Mark is 6 pounds. Eric is 4 pounds, and they're almost 5 months old. This is distorted. This is a miracle shot. You know, the old Sears kiosks where you would go in and they, you know, they have a blanket, you sit the kid up, you take the photo and you leave. If you look behind, Mark is on the left. If you look behind his ear, you can see the blanket. Mark has no trunk control. I am physically holding on to his onesie and holding on to his head. His head was like a basketball on a table. It just, you know, it was constantly in motion. And then Eric had head control, but his onesie is pulled, you know, straight jacket tight. And they captured, between all the head bobbing and the bouncing around and the wiggly trunks, they managed to capture this picture, which I think is miraculous. And this is, Jay was featured in a book called The Imagine Project. And so the photographer came out and took pictures of Eric on the left, Jay in the middle, and Mark on the right. As you can see, Eric is sporting his mini-me, Bruce mini-me mustache. And that's so funny because Mark and Jay couldn't grow a mustache to save their lives. But Mark and Jay and Eric at 18 and 16, 19 and 16. And I love that picture. This is their senior picture for Littleton High School. They were huge Rockies fans. So Eric's able to hold his ball and kind of hold his bat. Mark had no head control and no hand control. Our grandson at 10 minutes old had more skills than our 21-year-old. This is what became, the thing about Mark and Eric is that their lives became a community participation. They were one of the first generation not to begin inclusion, but when inclusion was becoming normalized. When they were born, feeding tubes were considered ICU level care. And now they let, I was having my 4-year-old give them feeding tubes, giving them lunch. So we've really normalized what life looks like with disability and that you can live a rich and full life with disability. Eric was at the baccalaureate night, when all the IB students and advanced placement students get all their ribbons and bows for their accomplishments. And Eric received the departmental award for physical education. And the teacher got up and said, he set his goal 4 years ago to walk across the stage, and he has been working for 4 years to do this. And behind him is the school occupational therapist, because he still would have fallen over. But he walked over 200 yards to receive his diploma. And in the front row, you can see the valedictorian, the salutatorian, and look towards the back, you can see kids are beginning to pop up. It became this wave. The kids that knew what was happening were jumping up to see him. And then the other kids were jumping up to see what was happening. And the parents in the stands began to stand and clap because they watched their kid be excited that this kid was accomplishing something. And so it literally, when people talk about their high school graduation, this is the moment they talk about that made their class special. It was really remarkable. And this is unified basketball. Mark and Eric were 18 here, so they're in the transition program. Under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, kids with disabilities go an extra 3 years, and mostly to learn community living. So if you're able to take buses and able to cook, you get more practice in self-care and community tasks and community access, a lot of employment jobs, a lot of supported employment, and education goes on to become more independent by the time they're 21. But we also have a lot of fun. So this was the unified basketball team for transition. Eric. Initially, Eric wanted to be a Radio Disney DJ. He grew up in they were born in 92, and height of Radio Disney was 95 to 99. And he wanted to be a Radio Disney DJ, and his Make-A-Wish trip was to go see B.B. Good, his favorite Radio Disney DJ. And he actually learned to talk. The hard thing about little kids is they repeat, everything's on repetition. Well, he learned to speak by going on an endless loop of, the circle of life, and then he'd get the next line, and then he'd get 3 lines, and then he'd get 4 lines. Well, eventually, he transitioned to wanting to be a sports announcer. So here he is on Fan Fest Day at Coors Field in the sports announcer's booth. And he is so proud. Eric proposed to his high school sweetheart of Shanna, and they were on and off for 8 years. And they both have intellectual disabilities. So Eric perseverated on Phineas and Ferb, the cartoon, and Shanna was a Frozen fanatic. It's very interesting to have adults this into Disney. Here, Eric, he's got his trach vent, so he was trach vent dependent, and he's wearing a Colorado Rockies ring from the 2007 National League Championship. And the ring is so heavy that I had to put his hand against his face because we're in a coffee shop and I'm envisioning this ring going splat all over, Starbucks. Mark couldn't see very well. He had 2200 vision. And we went to a developmental optometrist and he got bifocal contacts. And while his eyes are closed because his smile is so big, he came off the bus that first day after getting contacts and was making eye contact. And the teachers were blown away. We didn't know how little he could see. And something that simple that took years and years of trial and error to find the solution made all the difference. But this is how they looked every day going out into the community. Getting them going was frequently a struggle, but once they were going, they had a ball. They lit up the room. Mark's senior picture. He looks so sweet, right? Yeah, no, he would rather laugh at you than with you. And there's Eric as a referee, and we'd gotten him this jersey. When he had spine fusion, we took the jersey. They took the jersey into the classroom. Everybody autographed his jersey in the white, and you can actually see some of the autographs in the white stripes of the jersey. And here they are throwing out the first pitch with Walt Weiss.
Well, Walt Weiss
is
is
in the
the,
bottom right, and then our family is at the opening
to go out on the
to
field.
go out on the field.
Okay, good.
So Mark and Eric, just a pleasure.
Yeah.
Part of every day is living hell, and part of every day is heaven on earth. I think that might be true with most kids.
So that's, as I said, that was some context. So we talk about them, but it makes it better if there's some sense of who they were as human beings, as opposed to just kids with wheelchairs. So Mark passed in 2014 from what essentially was a blood clot. He went in a hurry. He was 21 at the time. Eric passed in 2015 of complications arising from sepsis or blood poisoning. He was 23. Over 600 people attended each memorial service, which is remarkable for kids who weren't mobile or particularly verbal, but they were consistently awesome self-advocates for the disabilities community, and they touched many, many other lives. They will forever be our heroes because, like so many people with developmental disabilities, they were courageous. They weren't defined by their disabilities. They cared about other people and engaged completely. They lived life to the fullest. And they remind us that God doesn't make mistakes. They were perfect just as they were for as long as they were. As you can imagine, getting past that with two of your children was neither easy nor fast, but life moves on. Jay and his wife Sveti having two sons, our grandsons, certainly helped. The second was born in September of 2018, the significance of which will become apparent momentarily. In late August of 2018, I hadn't been feeling well for a month or so and was having some marginal balance issues. I figured it was a virus or something and really paid it no mind. This was all pre-COVID, of course, and so it just didn't seem like that big a deal. Kelly contacted a neurologist we knew from work with the twins to get a recommendation for an office visit, and he said, don't fool around with an office visit, go to the ER and get an MRI. So on 28 August 2018, I was getting ready for work, and she says, you're going for an MRI. I said, nah, I've got to go to work. She said, you're going for an MRI, deal with it. Whereupon the superhero known as She Who Must Be Obeyed entered the room.
It took this long.
So we drove to the Littleton Hospital ER in separate vehicles since I'd anticipated going on to work when they found nothing. An hour after the MRI, the attending physician comes in and says, you have a large mass in your head and we're admitting you to the ICU. Naturally, I said, what exactly do you mean by a large mass? On 31 August, they wheeled me down to surgery, and 6 hours later, I was missing a racquetball-sized cancerous tumor in part of my brain, but I got a groovy scar out of it, and they left most of the personality intact, which some feel was a missed opportunity. The diagnosis wasn't pretty. It was a glioblastoma. And statistically, I was told I had maybe 12 to 18 months, as this type of cancer is fairly resistant to drugs because of the blood-brain barrier. I've had a number of people tell me it's a rough ticket getting cancer after having Mark and Eric. I say they've got it all wrong. Mark and Eric were a blessing. We met so many people, many great people through the disabilities community through them. I wouldn't have worked for ARC Thrift Store for 16 years absent their arrival. And Kelly forcing me to get the MRI was a blessing because I'm probably not here speaking to you without it. As a dude, I was unlikely to volunteer for one of my own accord. I say statistics means something applied to large populations of data, but not necessarily to individual data points. I'm reasonably young and otherwise healthy. My neuro-oncologist says I'm best in class of his patients in tolerating treatment to date, and that he's very happy with my progress. Of course, I explained to him that his happiness is my primary objective. I'm 27 of 28 on clean, or as we refer to them, unremarkable MRIs since December of 2018. I finished adjuvant chemo in November 2019. I'm back running. I did a 10K here in Littleton at the end of October with at an average mile of 13 minutes and 20 seconds. I'm 51 months past surgery, so don't bring that week 12 to 18 month stuff in here. And I've got the Optune device. The Optune device is a combination of.
He has 4 Band-Aids with 9 electrodes each that stick to his scalp. And then he's got the cord. I've always wanted to date a man with a ponytail. He's got a cord, bend down, that goes around back and hooks up to.
Ultimately hooks into, this is the Optune device, and it's lithium powered battery here that I replace every 4 or 5 hours. And go ahead, you want to explain the.
Okay, so
mechanic?
a regular microwave that you heat your food in is a high frequency microwave. This is a medium frequency microwave, and they have somehow figured out that cancer cell walls are leaky. So the medium frequency microwave penetrates the cell wall,
But
and
not the brain cells.
but not, well, the tumor cell wall, because they're the leaky cell wall. And then they inhibit the chromosomal spindles from lining up and then dividing into 2 cells. Instead, they can't line up. If they do line up, then the originating cell blows up and the new cell blows up. And of course, tumors are formed by rapid cell division, and it forms a hard mass. So if you prevent the cell division, you prevent the tumor. This is one of the most aggressive forms of cancer on the planet. It has the technology. This technology is 30 years old. It's been FDA approved for 15 years. It took 8 years for Medicare to approve it for primary onset of the glioblastoma. Only 2 years for secondary onset of when you have recurrences. But this is called glioblastoma multiforme. And that's because even though his location initially was in the right half of his brain, he's missing most of his right temporal lobe. It has fingers. It likes to be like an octopus or tendrils, and it wiggles its way into the deepest, farthest parts of your brain, and then it likes to grow more tumors. So this Optune device is pretty spectacular technology, and right now they're in phase 2 trials for non-small cell lung cancer, because it's a tumor prevention, so large tumors, ovarian cancer, and pancreatic cancer might be treatment for those cancers as well.
Yeah, we went to Washington and Philadelphia this past July, working with a company called Novacure that makes the device, and we met with various congressional staffers and delegates to encourage people to work with what's called CMS, which oversees the Medicare processes.
Centers for Medicaid and Medicare.
Yeah, and encourage them to expedite the approval of med tech. They're very good about approving pharma, but they tend to drag their feet a little bit on med tech, the eight months after FDA approval, even to approve this. And
8 years.
oh, my bad.
8 years. And so anyway, we did go back, and this would put it more on a fast track once it's FDA approved, which still takes a decade or two
Right.
to get approval.
So but there's, it's the company's real good about giving access to people who overtly can't pay for it because they don't have Medicare coverage yet. So but they shouldn't have to just give it away. There's a lot of effort involved in terms of R&D and
You're getting off your speech.
well, I know, but
Okay,
I'm trying to add some color.
you are. You always add color.
Yes, well, that's usually beige.
Yes.
So,
No, so there's just fun things happening, and the Optune device is in the same category of durable medical equipment as canes and walkers. Electric wheelchairs are in the same category as canes and walkers. So part of this new omnibus bill that they're trying to approve before the end of the year would potentially include some of these changes to Medicare. Health plans are covering treatment for the first incident, for the first tumor. After that, they may or may not cover treatment.
So, interestingly, the arrays have to sit right on the scalp. So in January of 2019, the device hadn't arrived yet, but I'd lost some of my hair through chemo and radiation, and we had to shave the rest of it off, which was, distressing given the Fabio locks you all saw earlier. So we had shaved the head, and I went into the office to say hello to everyone and just let them know I was still vertical. And my teammates took my nameplate off the door to my office and put Vin Diesel up, which I thought was a nice touch. Now, because the device just sits in a backpack, they just refer to me as Buzz Lightyear. It's interesting. People ask me if I feel anything when it's on, and when I've got the arrays on, and when it's turned on. And when I first got it, I kind of assumed I'd have a game of asteroids going on in my head, zapping electrical fields, zapping cancer cells, but I don't feel anything. It just sits there, does what it does at night. It hangs on a bedpost, and I just wear the arrays while I sleep, and it does its thing. At work, it just sits next to my desk on the floor, and same drill. It's very benign. Of course, there are some unintended consequences. Novocure knows about them. They don't publicize them, of course, because they don't want it used for the wrong reasons, but I can read everyone's thoughts. So fortunately, I respect privacy, so it's all good, but it's just, full disclosure. The value add is that every time I walk into a room with people I know, they tell me how good I look. That never happened before I had cancer. And I'm proud to have lived up to my dad's observation that I do now, in fact, have a hole in my head. The worst part of the experience is that I have this insatiable urge to sing the Scarecrow song from Wizard of Oz. You all know the words, join in. Oh, the thoughts that I'd be thinking, I'd be another Lincoln if I only had a brain. As we say at church, it's God's work in our hands, so I'm not crawling under the desk to suck my thumb while weeping, woe is me, I'm calling my own shots, and I'm not going to let a distressing diagnosis mess up a great opportunity to do something positive for other people. Let me close with a few quotes I've found to be inspirational and comforting. The early 20th century Irish dramatist, critic, and social reformer George Bernard Shaw said, "This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one. The being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clods of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making me happy. I'm of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations." Surgeon Dr. Bernie Siegel in Love, Medicine, and Miracles said, "In a life out of harmony with itself, events seem to conspire to go wrong. But by the same token, they mesh wondrously when you start to live your bliss." Perhaps this is another way of saying you create your own opportunities out of the same raw materials from which other people create their defeats. And the 20th century American philosopher Wayne Dyer said, "Above all else, never aim low or think small. You are a divine manifestation of God, and in that regard, you are connected to that which causes and creates miracles. So stop focusing on what you don't have and shift your consciousness to an appreciation for all you are and all that you do have." I wish you all the best. I hope you believe me when I say first and always it's about gratitude. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I will. And stay warm. And remember, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. Thank you so very much.
Wow. Thank you, Bruce and Kelly. Amazing story. I just, what you guys have done in taking, the circumstances and using them for good. Not many people would be able to do that. And for sharing. Appreciate it. We've got comments coming in. I'm just going to share here from Mary. Wow, thank you for what you do. I think that's when you were talking about the reach of ARC thrift stores and the charities, but I think that probably applies to the rest of your message too. From Caitlin, ADA was only passed in 1990. So pretty amazing that it took that long, but how far we've come.
Yeah, that's true.
IDEA was in the 70s, but ADA was just 1990.
Right. From Alicia, thank you. What a wonderful story. From Mary, thank you, Bruce and Kelly. I'm holding on to my torch with both hands, inspired by you. From Rachel, thank you for all you do and for sharing your story. From Abby, what an amazing story. I appreciate and look up to your positive outlook or positive attitude and outlook on life. And from Judy, you're so amazing. If we could all find inspiration from the both of you, what a better world this would be. Absolutely.
Thank you all so very much. It means a lot to us, honestly.
I do have a question, and if anyone else has questions too, but if I remember correctly, you had a lot of difficulty accessing resources for the boys.
Initially, yes.
Yeah, and I wonder if you maybe have any advice for, anyone who might be in that situation, who have children that need resources or know people that have children that have resources.
So yes, and we were in the 90s, right? And there weren't home computers. The internet wasn't really alive. I do remember a Facebook group for preemies, and we would, there's actually an Imagine project that was created out of that with moms. We were like, imagine, and we would go through all the awful things that had happened in our day. And then we would end with something that was good about our day. So same kind of thing. But it was very difficult. We made too much money to access any public resources. And we made not enough money ever to not be afraid of living under a bridge. The financial stress is, just the stress is catastrophic. So we really, for a while, it was a joke. You either knew Mr. Kelly Stallman or Mrs. Bruce Stallman, because you never saw both of us together. Bruce was doing food and shelter and Littleton City Council and his stuff, and I was doing the boys and their stuff. And the only time you'd see us is at like the basketball games or baseball. But it was brutal. The places to go, send number one to their local ARC. And any place in the state in Colorado that's not covered by a local ARC chapter is covered by the state chapter. So there's always someone to call. Around the country, the ARCs are a good resource, although they're usually provider organizations. Colorado, our ARC chapters, because of the funding, we sit outside of the money stream, and therefore we're able to hold everybody more accountable because we don't have a dog in the fight other than for the families.
And she's exactly right, not to jump in, but the chapters, the biggest problem is when you take your kiddos home, nobody tosses you an owner's manual and says, this is what you need to do. You get to make it up as you go along. And so it's all about networking and making, and the ARC chapters, the people who work at the chapters are subject matter experts in terms of how to access services and where to find resources. I mean, Kel didn't sleep for the better part of what, 2 years?
No, dear, 23.
Well, no, I know, but before we
I
got,
slept for the first 4 months, I slept 1 hour out of 24.
Yeah.
For this next 2 years, I slept from 11 to 1 and from 3 to 5.
and
Did you ever feel defeated all the time? And in fact, it wasn't until they passed that I figured out I had been a good mother, because no matter what you do, it's never good enough. And there's always so much more that needs to be done. So it's a brutal life. And yet what I miss most about them is the joy. I miss their joy so much. So part of every day was living hell, and part of every day was heaven on earth. But the other organizations, most states have a parent to parent. We have Parent to Parent of Colorado. Family Voices is a national organization, and most have state chapters, and they're very good at navigating the Medicaid waivers, as are for physical health and not just individuals with intellectual disabilities. So it depends on what your state looks like, but those are places to start. And then there's always a protection and advocacy organization, and every state is federally funded with a Developmental Disabilities Council. So the ARCs, Parent to Parent, Family Voices, the DD councils. And then in Colorado, we have our local community center boards. So the dog's going nuts. In the metro area, we have Rocky Mountain Human Services, Developmental Pathways, the Developmental Disability Resource Center out in Jeffco. But there's part of every state has somebody.
and just we do this pretty much every time we make the presentation, but if I think you've got our contact information, and if you want to share that information with someone who's in the middle of it and backstroking and needs to talk, whether it's disabilities or cancer, happy to be a resource for people. That's all part of our goal, to try to pay forward all the support we got, and how we can help other people as part of our journey.
And I do want to say to the person who asked about feeling defeated, none of this is pretty. We can give a pretty speech, and Bruce does it beautifully and he really, his sense of humor is one of the reasons I married him. But when he got brain cancer, you know, I was driving home from the hospital to the house, which is less than a mile or two. And I'm like, I can't wrap my brain around this. I cannot wrap my brain around this. We were in the emergency room watching John McCain's funeral the day he was buried, and he died of the same thing that Bruce was just diagnosed with. And I'm like, I can't, how do Mark and Eric have died. I'm just coming out from the depths of grief, and then he gets diagnosed. Don't tell me people don't die. I know for a fact they do die. And he literally hit it like a light switch. He was just like, nope, not living that way. I'm not looking at how I'm going to die. I'm looking at how I'm going to live for as long as I live. And it took me a longer time to come around and to believe it. And I still have trouble. He's a modern miracle. So that's what the story is tomorrow. Bruce will be on channel 4. No, excuse me. At 4 p.m. he will be on Denver 7 on the news segment. And it's Alexa Laeko is the reporter, but it's a longer segment on living with brain cancer and the Optune device. So medical technology, modern miracles. And with Mark and Eric, if there was every time they did surgery, they're like, well, that's 95% successful, but there's 5% chance of something will go wrong. Every single time it went wrong.
There you go.
With this, there's a 5% chance of survival and 1% after 5 years. And every single year, he's like, well, he has another unremarkable MRI. And we like that term, unremarkable. There's nothing to see, folks. It's staying the same. It's healthy.
And just, you know, with respect to the speech, I like to make the observation that, you know, in first and foremost, it's about gratitude. And when you think about it, nobody wants to raise their hand and say, sure, I'd like to have a brain cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, we didn't get in this line.
Yeah, but having the diagnosis at this point in time is clearly a blessing, because there are so many things like the Optune device that can be employed in addition to, you know, positive mental outlook, faith in God, and family, friends, and community support, that the whole thing fits together. And you know, absent some of that stuff, or, you know, 10, 15 years ago, it's probably a different picture by virtue of the fact that maybe this isn't approved.
In cancer, there's a saying, 5 for 5. Live 5 years for something to come up that will give you another 5 years.
There you go. And we got off track. Jim, you were going to ask another question, or?
No, that was really it.
Okay.
I think that's really helpful because I think, you know, we probably all know someone or know someone who knows someone who might need resources that they can't access. And the fact that, you know, with both of your backgrounds, that you still had the difficulties that you had.
Well, this is.
We are two college educated,
right,
white, Anglo-Saxon, English speaking. And
it was so brutal.
It was as though, I mean, it was insane. So one of the things we tried to do is bring some of the business strategies. And at the same time, we have learned how important access for all, that American, again, all politics aside, I'm assuming that every organization I speak with is there's both sides. So I'm not, but there should be a floor below which no one falls, or that it shouldn't be a full-time job to survive. It wasn't going to do anybody any good for Bruce and me and Jay to live under a bridge with medically fragile twins. So how did we not do that? How did we keep them out of the hospital and not incur those medical costs? Mark and Eric lived at home with ICU level care. Eric was trach vent dependent. He when his trach plugged, I had less than 60 seconds to clear the trach and change the trach. That's pretty intense care, let alone the 2 feeding tubes and the lifts and avoiding skin breakdown and infections. But we grew into it as well. So you need to have the support, and then you do it with home health services. And insurance pays for acute care. They pay for the surgery, the hip surgery, the knee surgery, the car crash, but they don't pay for long-term care if somebody needs supervision. And both our boys needed line sight care while they were awake and while they were asleep. Somebody had to be in the room awake when they were sleeping.
And therein, I mean, typically that, for the first X number of years, that was Cal, not, who was
first 14 years, we didn't have any.
No,
nighttime help.
that was one of the major issues initially, was you can't live for an extended period of time with no sleep. It's not physiologically
Well,
possible.
And if you do, you might seem a little bit crazy.
Yeah. But, just getting night nursing so someone could actually get, 6-8 hours of sleep was a major milestone, to say the least.
Well, and today there's such a nursing shortage that it's very difficult. People are getting 1 or 2 nights a week
Yeah.
of sleep, maybe.
Yeah, it's like I said, nobody flips you an owner's manual on your way out of the NICU. So, but that's why the community and the network and getting the word out to people that, there are resources and things that people know that they can access, that it is critical to help people survive.
There's, again, the question on being defeated. There has to be hope. And in order for there to be hope, you can't be so destroyed that you lose your sense of self.
Mhm.
You have to feel like you have agency and that there is some sort of pathway forward. So, everybody's like, what's your plan A? What's your plan B? What's your plan C? I'm like, I'm on my double A's and double B's and double C's. I've already gone through the alphabet. But there's still a pathway forward. And then, how do I want to live? Do I want to live? And sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes, trust me, there's a lot of breakdowns in this house present. But it's there's kind of a choice of, okay, I've done my pity party. Now let's clean up and go out and have a nice life.
But this is case in point. A lot, there's an awful lot of, for example, single moms who have a kid with a disability, and think about that for a minute. A lot of times, the dad, if he's even in the picture, isn't really in the picture.
Mhm.
It's not at all uncommon for the dads to disappear, and the mom's left with, disabled IDD kid, and trying to, keep a roof over their heads and food on the table, and try to generate services. And a lot of times these are not folks that they may be, for the DE&I concept that this involves, folks that aren't privileged the way I'm going to assume most of the people on this call are. Single, people of color, immigrants, whatever, not educated, and so forth.
And we've really tried. I've come down to 3 phrases that I used to come down to when I was feeling it's important to ask for help and to know who to ask. Yes. And so what I say is, necessity is the mother of invention. You don't know that you don't know what you don't know. So you have to go find out what you don't know. You hope for the best and prepare for the worst. So you've kind of got the gamut in a plan A to Z. And then we decided that as long as we weren't drinking in the basement by ourselves in the dark, it was a good day. And if you're with the dog, you're not alone.
Yeah, so that's okay. Caitlin, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I just want to say, like, I use identity first language, so I'm autistic. I can tell you, my parents like had not say it's no my support needs weren't near as extensive as your son's, but it was really hard, and I can tell you, like, my parents did a great job, and I'm sure you guys did too. Like, I just wanted you to say, like, that is like, there's more to there's I actually have a question, but it's just, and trust me, I understand the struggle for resources as an adult. Look, thankfully I have, by working my patootie off, I'm able to stay independent, and I have a good, I work as a senior tax accountant.
Good.
And so, but
Congratulations.
so I was just, because ARC is a resource for disabled people. How do you feel about for like the Senate Bill 39 for Colorado eliminating sub-minimum wage for, disabled people? Because I don't know if ARC did sub-minimum wage. I know Goodwill has. I'm not.
So the Arc of Colorado helped spearhead that bill. So we feel strongly
Okay.
that people working should be receiving minimum wage. What I will say is that, so number one, you said you weren't as complex as our kids. It doesn't matter where you are. Your life is your life. There's always going to be somebody who has it better, and there's always going to be somebody who has it worse. So you have to do you. And that's your reality. With sub-minimum wage, there were people in day programs that can't, how do I say this? We believe that anybody can have a job and anybody can earn minimum wage.
Mhm.
Flat out, no exceptions, including Mark, who couldn't walk or talk. However, he wouldn't have enjoyed it, and it wouldn't have been a good quality of life for him. He needed to be with friends. He needed to have more entertaining activities. He wasn't going to be putting widgets. I think of that old Lucille Ball with the candy wrapping. He was never going to be a production line, whether it's making necklaces or putting in ARC Thrift. A lot of the folks with IDD are putting clothing on hangers, but they're also doing it with their friends, and there's a community. And if somebody gets stuck, there's talk, and it's a different environment than a traditional work approach. So we strongly believe that people who are working should have access to minimum wage. What was lost was some of the social activities that occurred when they were doing art projects and then sold those art projects, because that was technically sub-minimum wage work. So I don't know how to bridge that. I think this is a great step forward for people to earn minimum wage, but we still have to always, federal law and state law says that it needs to meet individual needs. So we need to have a variety of solutions to meet individual needs for individuals with different disabilities. And as you know, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
Yes. Yes, it's, trust me, there's a whole range of different people that have better executive functioning skills than me, but may not be verbal, but trust me, I just want to say thank you. And I do appreciate the spearheading, because I think it's on the right track. As you said before, I don't disagree with anything, and with what you said, and I believe people should have the autonomy to, so a job may not be for that particular person, and they still need to have resources and support. So
Thank you, Caitlin.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you both again for sharing your story. It's you're both just incredibly strong people, and I don't even know how else to express how much I admire you.
Thank you so very much.
And I hope that you have many more unremarkable MRIs.
His next one's in January.
Yep.
Okay. Best wishes, and hope you have a great holiday season and a happy new year. And I hope everyone else here on the webcast has a great holiday
wish-
season and a happy new year. And we hope to see you again.
And one plug, if you have any groups that would like to hear Bruce's speech, it's his new calling in life. So
Oh, thanks so much. You may be, you might regret offering that up.
Not
at
Knowing
all.
this
Happy
group.
to, yeah, I'd like to tell people I've still got a day job, but this is my new avocation. So happy to do it, but thank you for having us.
Great.
Can't thank you enough for the opportunity, and
I just saw somebody say, ask me to unmute or ask to unmute. And I think it was Alicia.
I don't
No?
know.
Okay, there was a flash of something.
I don't
Okay,
know.
thank
Okay.
you.
All
Okay,
right. Thanks, everybody.
take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.